Hello, you're watching MOTH News. My name is Keith Walsh. How are you doing? We are chatting with Canadian striker Christie Gray, former Shelbourne star, and now playing with Calgary Wild in Canada's brand new Northern Super League. She joins me to unpack England's stunning win. Was it stunning? At UEFA's Women's Euro 2025. I'm only saying that because I don't want to put words in her mouth. And we get our thoughts on the debate surrounding comparisons with the men's game, plus life playing across Ireland, Sweden, and Canada. Christie, you're very welcome. Thank you very much for joining me.
Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Good. I'm Irish, so I have to ask, what time is it there?
It's 1:30 in the afternoon, so my day has really just started, even though I know yours is nearly ending. So
hey, look at
7 hours you've been behind.
People are going to be watching this. It's someone got some anytime, so it doesn't really matter. But it's just an Irish thing. You have to find out what time it is and what the weather's like over there, and what's the weather like over there.
Of course, it's quite sunny out. It's gorgeous out today, like 20s. A nice Irish sunny day. Yeah.
Nice. We've got a heat wave on the way, so we're feeling pretty happy.
There you go. Absolutely. That sounds good.
Christie, UEFA Women's Euro 2025. Let's start with that. What did you make of the final, and did England deserve it in the end?
Good question. I think it was an exciting tournament overall, and I think England was able to get there, and they're consistently one of the top performing teams, especially at these major tournaments. And I think at the end of the day, those with experience in these high pressure situations find a way. And I felt like throughout the tournament, England continued to find a way to keep going, and leaned on, some young stars like Hampton and net, and obviously Chloe Kelly coming in clutch again, yet again. So a big player in big moments. And I think that's what separates them from a lot of other teams in the tournament.
Yeah, I mean, you need a lot of luck, right? In a tournament like tournaments are long, and you need that luck. And England, I mean, was it luck, or was it just that they just didn't know when they were beaten?
I wouldn't say it's luck. I mean, there is always, I suppose, an element of luck. You look at Germany, they lost their captain or top player early in the tournament, and you can point fingers and look elsewhere. But like I said, champions and experience typically find a way, and England did continue to find a way throughout the tournament, all the way through till the end and winning the tournament. I think Spain is obviously an incredible side, people can debate they deserve to win, but again, England was the one who managed to find a way and come away with the win. So they deserve credit.
I was definitely surprised at the final because I think people expected Spain to have more possession, and to really kind of rule the game possession-wise. But I actually thought England changed it up a little bit and seemed to really mix it with them and didn't really offer up possession. They didn't sit back I know they're sort of more of a team that kind of go on, they play on the break, and that's how they got a lot of goals. But it seemed different in the final. Did you pick up on that at all?
Yeah, I think throughout the tournament, Spain is typically someone who separates themselves. They're so fun to watch. They're super dynamic. They have some of the best players in the world running their midfield in the entire team, quite frankly. The number in their starting lineup of girls who play for Barcelona and, say, Chelsea and other massive clubs around the world. They're an incredible side to watch possession style, and I think England actually did decent to keep up and hold them off relative to maybe some other opponents and earlier on in the tournament, where it looked like sometimes it almost looks as if they're playing with kids sometimes, because the way they move the ball and pass around and break down other midfields. I thought England managed it quite well, but again, everything kind of goes out the window in massive tournaments, especially in a final. So I thought it was a pretty decent match.
Any particular players stand out for you across the tournament? Personal highlights, players who caught your eye, teams that surprised you?
I think, again, we talked about earlier how England always found a way, and looking for the young emerging players in the tournament, like Hampton, who obviously was in net. Mary Earps not being a part of the tournament opened up a massive opportunity for a young star to show up, and I thought she did show up pretty consistently throughout the tournament. Her distribution's pretty incredible. I think Vicky Lopez on Spain is another exciting player to watch. She's pretty gifted and still so young. So we hopefully have another long career of her to watch. I think she's so exciting, and especially for her age. I think she's only 18 now, if that. So long future ahead, has the potential to be, have an outstanding career like, Bamadi, Puteas, like some of these other Spanish stars. And obviously England relying on subs to come off the bench. Like they had a young player come off and make an impact massively and help bring them to, the semis and then the final. So I really loved watching the impact that the young players made throughout the tournament. It just shows that there's a lot to look forward to in the future, and you only really need a few minutes to make an impact. So I thought that was a good message to send to anyone sort of watching, whether you're a game changer or starter. All you really need is a few minutes to make an impact, to assist or get that goal.
Yeah, totally, and that's it. It's like they're starters and finishers. It's not like it's not the same as it used to be, where like you'd have your 11 players, and then if someone got injured, you might get a goal. So it's totally different. And I think that the England manager managed it really well. Like, I mean, she knew what she had on the bench, and she knew when to bring them on. And I mean, they definitely, I mean, they won games, as you mentioned, like clutch moments, and that was all down to, a lot of that was down to the subs. I was talking to my son. We watched a lot of the games. I was talking to him, and I was trying to verbalize what I thought of the game, in general, women's game. We'd watch a fair bit of it, and I think it's to do with the atmosphere. Obviously, the sound of the crowd is different, so there's a different tone, there's a different vibe. You're not going to see, the big, angry, red-faced man shouting at the person taking the corner. You're going to see a lot less aggression from the crowd. So the players are kind of just allowed to play the game by and large, without that extra pressure, that the fans want to get involved. They want blood. They expect something. It's a totally different vibe. And I loved, even in the final, when obviously the Spanish players were devastated, but the English players, they formed the Guard of Honor. They were talking to them at the end. They were consoling them. And I just thought there was when that young English player, her name escapes me, she got Young Player of the Tournament. And she was obviously really well looked after, because she only really came into the team for this tournament and had only played 4 minutes or something for England before. And you could see how they got her to go up first onto the podium, and you could see how they really like mothered her and looked after her. Is that typical of this game?
Yeah, it's an interesting. I think you brought up some points that we're seeing globally with women's football. The crowds and the fans for it are they do differentiate from the men's game. There are some similarities. We can get into that later, but the fan base for women's football does frankly look a bit different than the men's game, and it is a more inclusive, maybe want to say like family friendly, accepting space for whoever and however you choose to identify, all those types of things. So I think all of those sort of inclusive elements to women's football, and something that's been frankly flying under the radar for so long, now that it has the platform and has been given sort of the space, the money, and the momentum to propel to new heights, it's an exciting thing to be a part of. And I think because it hasn't always been this way, those who are supporting and really behind it are just so grateful that it exists, so happy to support women's sport, which really 50% of the population is female. So the fact that we can finally now celebrate people who look like us and look up to role models and be those people for young fans is exciting. And to your point about the young English star and how they sort of mother her or just were super excited for her, I think you see a lot more of that. Obviously, people are competing, and there's probably forwards who didn't get subbed on that are maybe older, but sort of putting your own pride aside and supporting the next generation, and supporting the young players in front of you. Like I know, for example, our coaching staff is from England, and one of my head coach actually, I think, did manage the girl who went on in the tournament and did extremely well. And it's exciting. And that was not too long ago. She coached the underage England squad. So I think for her, speaking with her about the Euros and the English staff, it was pretty incredible, because not long ago they were in, obviously, the U20s or younger environment. And if supported properly with, the English best stars in the world, that can help her transform her career. Like I said, she only had a few minutes, but it's what you do with those minutes. And I think that sends a message to both young girls and other girls maybe later in their career who have become finishers and have the ability to still make an impact. So I think overall the women's game does differentiate for sure, and we can get into that more later. But I think the overall supportive energy, I even see it here in Canada, going to say a pro men's football match or soccer versus our games, and seeing the fan bases, they are different, and I think it's a lot more of an inclusive, family-friendly environment in comparison. I mean, I'm not saying that men's matches aren't. I think you just see more of that at the women's game, and just the overall excitement and support. It's obviously still so new in so many countries. I mean, in Canada, this is the first year of the Pro League. So it's pretty interesting to compare. Obviously, I grew up going to watch men's soccer matches because that's all you could really watch. So it's interesting to compare the excitement and the fan bases and which corporate sponsors engage with who and how they navigate that. Because I think the business side, which I studied business in university, that really interests me. And it's very different how brands interact with the women's game, I think, than the men's.
Yeah, totally. And of course, there's that a massive sort of LGBTQ plus element to it as well, which is great. So speaking of safe spaces and seeing that support as well. I suppose we can get into that then. There was a lot of talk about the quality of penalties, some missed. I mean, I actually thought the keepers did really well and really did their homework. And you talk about the English keeper who virtually kind of won the penalty shootout for England in the end with two, I think, brilliant saves, and had her homework done, had it written on her hand. She was cheating. If I did that in an exam, I'd have failed. I'd have been failed. But it was brilliant. It was brilliant to see the dedication, the homework done, and she knew what she was doing. She pulled off two brilliant saves. I think the last one then was a miss. I mean, we could talk about the quality of penalties we want, but do you feel frustrated by the way people, let's be honest, mostly men, compare the women's game to the men's game? I saw the absolute idiot Joey Barton like tweeting for absolute no reason other than to say something horrible. I mean, my sense of it is, and I don't mean this in any sort of a patronizing way. They're two separate, totally different sports. Am I right?
I think it's interesting. I mean, I guess to address your first question about penalties, I think penalties is just not a great way to end a game, to end a tournament. It never is. It's a bit of a coin toss. I mean, you cannot really replicate the pressure that these players are facing in those moments. I've scored a penalty that helped win a college conference championship. I've also missed a penalty, which caused us to lose the President's Cup the first year I was in Ireland. So, I mean, you've been on both sides of the coin at different stages in your life.
Which one do you remember more clearly?
Though obviously the one where you lose, you feel like you're letting everybody down. But you know what, it happens, and like you can be on both sides of the coin at different stages in your career. And I mean, we were in 2 FAI Cup finals. We lost in the first year, and there was penalties missed, but we won it in the second year. So you're the greatest hero in the world if you score, and the reverse flip if not. But I think to your point, rather than focusing on the players who've missed or scored their penalties, I think we saw some pretty incredible goalkeeping moments throughout the tournament. The German goalkeeper made a phenomenal save, and just the overall athleticism and ability to get to some balls was crazy. Specifically from the German keeper, I thought had a great tournament. And
Berger,
and the English keeper Hampton, I thought she really stepped up. So again, I think it's not a great way to end a tournament, to win or lose, but it's, I guess, part of the game. And I know we touched on it a bit earlier, but I think the women's game and the men's game, I guess fundamentally it is the same game, but like commercial opportunities, they're played by two biologically very different individuals. So it's hard to compare. Yes, it's the same game, but there's certain elements to it that like can't be compared. Obviously, like speed, physicality, athleticism. There's players that can maybe mimic those in the other game. So you take Messi, obviously, for example. Maybe there's elements of Messi's game that Putellas, you see, or Bonmati in running the Spanish midfield. So I think there's definitely elements of the game you can compare and say maybe Lamel, like elements of his game that you can see in the women's, but they are fundamentally the same game played by two biologically different humans. So you can't really compare it, I don't think, in a lot of ways. And so fan bases are different, like we've talked about, and the way corporate sponsorships engage with them are very different. It's just like how you look at how the WNBA is run, the Pro Basketball League for women in the States versus the NBA, just how we, the NSL, are run differently than the MLS. There's some similarities because it is, at the end of the day, a game of football, but it's played by two biologically very different people. So I think the way that it is broadcasted and shown is like quite different.
Yeah, totally. And the different audience, it's been marketed to different people. Also, I enjoy it more because I find that the top teams in the Premier League, it's very robotic. It's very system based. It's not as kind of it's not as it's too tight for me. I find Premier League football a tad boring, and I see the passion more with the women's game. I see the tears, I see the joy, I see the effort, I see the will to win. You see it. It's not like, it just seems to be a little bit like managers kind of run the Premier League game is about the managers really, and their setup and the system. Players are kind of just slot in, and unless you're an exceptional midfielder and you can, the team is built around you. But it feels like when you watch the women's game, you're more aware of every position, every player, and the effort they're making. And maybe that's just me, and maybe I'm looking at it, with different eyes or something.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. And I think because for so long the women's game, like each female that you see on the field in these pro environments, have had to work other jobs or do other things for so long. So brands, and to the point about advertising, who are really leveraging these incredible stories to tell, because a lot of girls that I know, for example, have done their college degrees or worked other jobs, like usually while overseas, I'm working at least 2 other jobs just to survive. So it's a gift that now I'm a full-time pro footballer. But there's pretty cool stories to tell. Like there's a lot of different industries, engineers, doctors, nurses. If you look in Ireland, Kate Mooney, my teammate, she works as a nurse, and she just won Player of the Month in the League of Ireland. I don't know how she does it. I don't know how some of our other teammates who are financial advisors and other things do their job and then play football as well. So I think brands who are smart about the game and leverage these stories create a more engaged fan base, because people do take the time to really know everyone's story, and the engagement levels on social media in the women's side of sport have often proved to be higher, just because you have those more intimate relationships with your fans and people are more bought into you as a person and your story and care about your well-being. So I think when I'm looking at the game holistically, and don't get me wrong, like obviously there's Premier League stars on the men's side where young boys and girls worship them. But I think on the women's game, because they've typically women have had to do so much more extra at all times, to whether it's branding themselves to try and get that extra deal, bring in that extra money. Their fan bases are a lot more engaged. So I find that a pretty interesting part of the game. And maybe that's why, to your point, people are more aware of the stories and who these people are off the field as well.
Yeah, there's more accessibility, isn't there? And generally, I'm not saying it's a good thing, but even with, some Irish players, and I won't name any names, who play in England, and they might be in relationships or out of relationships. That seems to be a big point for some people who follow, something like football meets Love Island in some ways. But there seems to be more accessibility. They seem to be more human, and they'll say maybe things at a press conference that men would be almost like. I find it more human, and I find it's possibly an accessibility thing where the fans seem to feel like they're a bit closer to the players.
Yeah, it's a good point, and I think obviously the rise of social media has really helped with that, more behind the scenes content, so you can understand what your favorite player does on an off day, where they live, what type of activities they do, what coffee shops they visit, and the whole players or people dating each other, seeing each other, and being open about that. I think that's the summary of the difference between the game is the women's space seems like a more open and inclusive, transparent sort of community, whereas there's still maybe a bit of a closed element to the men's game that prevents those barriers from getting that much closer with your players and fans. And so I feel for those maybe men in the Premier League or men's side of the game who do identify in the LGBTQ plus realm, because I do not think it's as open and accepting as an environment as obviously the women's side of the game, which frankly I don't think you would meet many female footballers who would be shocked by that news, many managers who wouldn't be accepting in that way. Whereas, again, I'm not a male footballer, I can't speak to it, but just from observing, it just doesn't seem as though it would maybe be as well received. So that I can understand that could be difficult. But I think that comes from us having more of like an open and transparent environment, which again comes back to why you can have maybe those deeper conversations at press conferences, and they're maybe more surface level on the flip side, if that makes sense.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, absolutely. I think there's just it's definitely accessibility, or they're closer to, you feel like they're more like real people. There's too much sort of like secrecy and privacy, I think, with the Premier League game. And that's difficult for the players as well, that they have to sort of keep up this sort of facade, and then the private lives, if something is discovered, then it's splashed all over the tabloids, so you can understand why. But you're probably better off being upfront about certain things in the first place, and then you own the story, But look, that's a big difference for me, and definitely the more human element sort of brings a lot to the game. And I've heard players and saying just don't stop comparing the two things. They're different games. Tell me about Shelbourne, because you're a Shells player, top scorer, cup winner. Played for 2 seasons with them, and I know that before you left Ireland last year, you were top scorer for Shelbourne. What was that experience like, and what was it like living in Dublin?
Dublin was amazing. I think in 2023, I can't remember if there was a few number of us who were close at the top. And so, I mean, it was an exciting 2023 between the cups and leagues competition. I think it was my first year living and playing in Dublin. Shells was an incredible experience for me. It's like anywhere in life, you'll have your ups and downs throughout it. But I think particularly the first year in 2023, we were competing in 4 different tournaments. So we had the League of Ireland, obviously, and then there was the new All-Ireland Cup introduced. So that combined both the UK and the EU, so Northern Ireland and Ireland. So we got to play a lot of Northern teams, which was a cool experience. And then we also went to Champions League because the girls had won the previous year. So I went over to Lithuania, played Cardiff City, and we played, who else did we play? Well, Glasgow City from Scotland. So that was a pretty cool experience to play on the international stage. Had some family come over to watch, and my dad came. And then obviously we had the FAI Cup as well. So the League of Ireland, All-Ireland Cup, FAI Cup, and Champions League. So that was a pretty cool experience. A lot of new things, a lot of travel, and a lot of exciting times with great people. I think that's like when I look at my time that I spent in Ireland, whether it's cup play or league play, the people, like anything in the world, make it. And that's what I think part of what makes Shelbourne so special. I feel like even to this day, I still keep in good touch with a lot of my teammates and staff and players and people involved with the club there. I lived with a host family for my first few months there. And they're pretty much like parents to me. So I've got a lot of family and important people in my life who I gained as a result of going over and playing at Shelbourne. So yeah, I was there for 2 seasons and finished second in the league both years, which was really too bad, and made it to the FAI Cup final both times, lost 1 and won 1. So it was nice to end having won as opposed to the reverse.
Yeah. So you came to Ireland, basically did everything, and then moved on.
I don't know about did everything, but I feel like I was, given an opportunity to see a lot, and I learned a ton from my teammates. I mean, some of the greatest players I've ever played with, Noel Murray still playing, Pearl, our captain. There's some pretty special players in the league. And at the time, I think Hannah Healy was the youngest player to ever play in Champions League, coming with us to Lithuania, 15 years of age or something. It was insane. So it was a really cool opportunity to meet some of the young emerging stars in Ireland. And then obviously some legends who are still kicking it in their 30s and absolutely tearing it up, and they're still playing. So it was a great experience, and I met one of my best friends there, Maggie Pierce, who she is a true legend. She won Player of the Year twice and came from one of the top schools, North Carolina, UNC, in the States. So I learned a ton from her, football-wise and life-wise. And yeah, she's one of my best friends. She's like a sister to me, and we got to live and play together for 2 years. And now she's back home in the USL playing, and I think we both can go back and visit our family. We're planning to at the end of the year. So I'm very grateful overall for my experience, learned a ton, and really enjoyed my time.
Yeah, it's more than just a game, isn't it? It's the people, it's the experience. It's a great, I mean, for anybody thinking to get into it, I suppose, if you can get to a certain level, it's a great way to travel and see a country and really, embed yourself in the country, in the culture of the country. So were you surprised when Ireland got knocked out by Wales? Didn't qualify. I think we were kind of shocked, but then we have had some conversation where we thought maybe it's probably time for the FAI to step up again to support the women's game, but I don't know, maybe you'd have an insight.
Yeah, it's a good point. I remember it happening. Jessie Stapleton, for example, a young player who was playing with us before going over to England, and she's involved in the senior international setup, and she's like a young rising star who I feel like will be involved with the national team for a long time. So I remember watching, all of us did, when they did lose. It was really unfortunate, and I think trying to picture, obviously Wales was at the tournament, their manager is actually Canadian, but trying to picture like how Ireland would have done at those tournaments. And I think in comparison, like they're always a team, and it's in the culture really, like who dig deep and work hard for each other. And it would have been interesting. I really wish they made it to the Euros, because I think they would have brought a really good fight and energy, and the support for a small but mighty country I always found was so special and unique. And I loved being a part of it and witnessing that. So undoubtedly they would have had that support at the European tournament. But look, I mean, there'll always be another tournament and another year of international friendlies and competition. And who knows what the FAI will do. I think it's
nobody ever knows. Nobody ever knows what the FAI will do. They're like an enigma.
Yeah, it's hard to know. But I would have loved to see them at the Euros. It's really too bad. But look, it's not the last international tournament, and I don't think it's the last you'll see them. I mean, on my team now, there's 7 international spots, so girls playing for national teams from all over the world. 2 girls actually part of the Wales setup, but at an underage level, and Philippines and other teams who have played against. And they always say like Ireland is a really good team, which I think is a compliment. I mean, there's girls who play for a lot of different and bigger countries, and they just went to the States, who are the top in the world, and put up decent performances. So when you look at the scale and size of the country compared to the United States of America, frankly, Canada, and a lot of other countries, it's pretty amazing what they've been able to accomplish. So.
Yeah, and I think the girls are working hard, and I think any managers we've had over the last few years have worked hard, and I think we just need the FAI to step up and to make sure they're doing as much as they can. I'm sure they are. I'm sure they're doing lots of PowerPoint presentations for end up with nothing happening. So how are things for you personally with this season? You happy with this? So you're playing in this new league. It's all brand new. Is it the first professional league then for women in Canada?
Yeah, I can give a bit of background. So the Northern Super League is the first ever professional league to exist in Canada, and there's 6 teams, and it kicked off in April at BC Place in Vancouver for the first time ever, which is my hometown, and we were part of the first game against Vancouver, which was a pretty special moment. There was over 14,000 people in the stadium, and thousands, hundreds of thousands more watching online, because they've done a really fantastic job at setting up proper broadcasting contracts from the start. So whether that's CBC, who would be like our RT, our national broadcaster, plus TSN and ESPN in the States. So you can view these games from virtually anywhere. And the accessibility of that has allowed like commercial partners to get on board and support us individually as players and collectively. Like I mentioned, there's only 6 franchises. So Vancouver, Calgary, Toronto, Montreal, Ottawa, and Halifax. So sometimes when you're doing, especially the coast to coast travel, going to Halifax, you might as well be going to Europe at this point, because it is a long way to travel for one game. But we have like great partners like WestJet and Air Canada who help to fly us around the country to these different spots to play the games. And I think it's been shocking. The support is incredible from around the world, really. And yeah, we've had an interesting start. I mean, because there's only 6 teams, the table pretty much fluctuates every weekend. And some off to a more maybe consistent start than others. We're just probably approaching halfway throughout the season. I think there's a few things that if ironed out, we will be able to fly a lot more seamlessly. So we've got a couple new forwards who are coming in at the international break, which is great. one Canadian who has experience playing around the world and another American. So I think it's great to learn from international perspectives. Our whole staff is from the UK, so I've played and been involved with various setups in England, both at the Premier and Championship level on the men's and women's side. And most recently, our data analyst who's from Portugal, also involved in the UK, both in Scotland and England, various levels and clubs. So we've got a ton of different experience. And on the playing side, there's up to 8 international spots per franchise. So each team can bring in girls from all around the world. You would think it's like most domestic leagues, you'll see the odd international spots who come in. But I mean, with 8 international spots, that's like actually quite a high number compared to a lot of leagues around the world. So we've got girls from New Zealand, Australia, the Netherlands, US, all over the place, and girls who represent, say, like the Philippine national team, Welsh national team, Australia, New Zealand, you name it. Like there's pretty cool amount of representation and girls coming in and out of camp, and some of our young players getting called in for Canada, which is amazing. And I think overall, the visibility that this league provides for young players and frankly players after college like myself who now have something they can look towards is so important. And to be able to see role models and keep girls involved in sport for as long as possible, because it's opened up jobs as well. I mean, obviously, us as players are so fortunate to be here and have this chance because so many people I recognized before me did not. But I mean, we look around at the female referees, the coaching jobs, the data analyst jobs, strength and conditioning jobs, media broadcasting jobs. It's opened up, frankly, a whole new industry in Canada, and the support has been like overwhelming. So it's been a really great experience overall. Like any first year of a league or franchise, you're going to have natural growing pains. I think compared to the European setups where you leverage the infrastructure and sort of operations of male clubs often. So you look Chelsea men, Chelsea women, Liverpool men, Liverpool women. We don't have that. So none of the franchises are built off the back really of any male existing team, which I think has its faults. You know, naturally you're starting from square zero, rock bottom. And whereas Shelbourne, for example, you can leverage the existing infrastructure, fan base. If you're a Shells fan and you have a daughter, naturally you'll probably become a Shells women's fan as well as a Shells men's fan.
Yeah.
Versus if you're the Dublin Rumblers or something random that's not associated, naturally it's going to take more time to build that type of momentum in sport. So I have my thoughts for sure about like ways certain things were decided, but I think despite that, the momentum behind every franchise has been pretty overwhelming. So that's exciting, but naturally it's expensive and for the clubs and the league. But I think I have to give our CEO a ton of credit for getting those broadcasting deals right, because that's what has been able to launch us right into the limelight and get commercial partners involved right from the beginning. So it's been pretty cool to be a part of, and I'm happy living in Calgary. It's a new part of Canada to explore.
Yeah, that's great. You must have been. I mean, it's almost like the universe going, "Oh, here's an opportunity in your hometown, or close to home to play football professionally." When it wasn't there before, so it must be really great. Unless you're just like, "Oh, I wish I was living far away from home." So tell me then, if there's any young girls watching or parents of young girls who are interested in football or playing football to whatever level. I mean, look, I always say to my children, pick a sport or whatever, but you should think of it more as like a sport for life, for fun, for health, obviously, for enjoyment, for friendship, and if anything comes with it, that's a bonus. It's a cherry on the cake. But what advice would you give to any girls who think, oh, maybe I'd like to play professionally maybe someday, or I'd certainly like to play for the rest of my life until I get to until I can't anymore. And there's over 35s leagues, so it can literally be your sport. What would you advise to girls who maybe looking to get into it?
Yeah, I would say there's a few things off the bat. I think for myself, and I recognize maybe this isn't possible in all countries, but I was fortunate to grow up playing a ton of different sports. I didn't just play football or soccer I did obviously from a young age, like 5 or 6. I'd play on the gravel field at my school with boys and girls, mainly boys actually. For a bunch of my youth, played hard baseball with boys until I was 12. field hockey, snowboarding, skiing, wakeboarding, squash, tennis. Honestly, gymnastics, competitive gymnastics I did as well, which I honestly think are fundamental reasons why I have been able to develop as the athlete I am, and has helped my game in a lot of ways. And I think it's important for physical and emotional burnout. So I encourage anyone who asks me, is I would say play as many games and as many different types of activities as possible until I know obviously you hit a point, like for me before college, I had to make a sort of decision if I was going to play field hockey or soccer, grass hockey, you guys call it. And so obviously at a certain point you do have to specialize. And I find the over specialization of sport is becoming more and more prominent younger and younger, which I think is just a recipe for burnout physically and emotionally. Whereas I think if you have these other responsibilities that you're balancing, you're less likely to see kids burning out at 14, 15, 16, if that's all they've been doing their whole life. I remember when I was in France briefly studying and playing, and the men's academy was attached to where we were training, and seeing the kids with their laundry bags going to and from their house, their school, their training, house, school, training. It was like this triangle all in the same place. And I just think a change of sport and environment entirely teaches you such important skills, because you're realistically in life going to have to navigate a lot of different types of scenarios. So I think a piece of advice in summary would be play as many sports as possible. I think, or activities. I know one of my closest friends, he did tap dancing and soccer, and he was one of the most technically gifted players in his team and for the longest time at university. So I think diversify, play as many things as you can. Second, I would say work as hard as you can, because as someone, for me, I feel like I developed a lot later in my career than maybe some young stars. Like I never really played on my provincial team or high level until I was later. And then things started working out in college and had a good run there. And then overseas, I think I developed later in my career. And I have a couple of friends who played other sports at a high level for a long time and just worked really hard and never stopped. So play a lot of different sports because there'll be complementary skill sets to whatever you choose to do in life, and work hard because I think you never know what doors it can open for you. And for me, it's enabled me to travel the world and meet some of my closest friends. So yeah.
Don't give up. Don't give up. But that's the thing as well for young players. They might be looking at, there are always, and I coach a little bit myself as well, but you'd see players who are naturally gifted, and then you see the players who work hard, and at some point they if you're naturally gifted, I would also say if you're naturally gifted, you have to work hard, because you have to back up the people will overtake you. So that's a difficult thing for young players who are naturally gifted as well. So, but just if you love it and you're good at it, stick at it and work hard. And I think that's some really great advice. And you just never know. You never know where it could bring you. Finally, what's something, because you played in Sweden, you played in Ireland, you played in France, and Canada, almost played in France. What's something the game has given you that you never expected starting out?
Yeah, I think the game has given me the chance to see so many parts of the world from a perspective that I would not have otherwise received unless I played the sport. So obviously I had the chance to go to Sweden, but it's not like I was just in town visiting. I lived in a small town in Sweden where there was not a whole lot besides our team, an ice hockey team, and a grocery store. So I had experience living in a ton of different settings, meeting people from all over the world, and just seeing how they operate, what's normal to them in life. Because obviously in North America, we have our perception of what normal is, and our normal looks a whole lot different than, say, for example, your guys' normal in Ireland versus someone's normal in Sweden. The country is set up as IKEA. That's how I try to explain it to most people. There's not a ton of options for different things, but what they do really well. And it's a great place to live. Systems and things make sense, and I enjoyed living there. Ireland is a lot of fun. I met some of the greatest people and had
the opposite to be built by IKEA.
Maybe
built by a man after a few pints of Guinness, I think, Ireland.
Yeah, it was definitely a different experience, but I loved it. And it was kind of refreshing because I think North America is so go, 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 whereas Ireland has just sort of changed my perspective of what's important in life. And you meet some of the happiest people who are working the simplest of jobs, and there's not as much pressure in some ways, whereas I feel like sometimes in North America, if you don't have your master's or PhD by age 29, people are like, what's going on? which is obviously the extreme side of the scale. I think it's refreshing and it gives you a ton of perspective living in these different countries. So football's the gift it's given me is meeting some incredible people and seeing parts of the world that I probably would have never seen at that age. I feel like I've been lucky to see most of Europe, and I'm 26, I just turned. So I feel pretty lucky to have had the chance to both study and play. So two totally different perspectives on the cities and countries I've had a chance to live in. And it's nice to be home now. But I do think I'm very grateful to be a part of this league at home. And it's because of the chances that my manager in Ireland gave me to stay. Same with my coach in Sweden and agents and people along the way who have helped open these doors. So I definitely give credit to a lot of people in my life who have supported me and helped facilitate the opportunity to do what I do.
Mm-hmm. So people can follow the league. Is it the Canadian Northern League?
The Northern Super League is what it's
Northern
called.
Super League.
Yes, yeah, Northern Super League.
NSL and people. I know I watched the highlights of your last game on the Facebook or YouTube page, the NSL YouTube page, and have all the games there every week. So I'll definitely be keeping an eye on the progress. So best of luck for the season. And I mean, anybody watching now, this is your new team. For the year, forget about Manchester United. They're not going to do it this year. But Shelbourne's might. Shelbourne men, Shelbourne women, or Athlone Town, I think, are playing in the Champions League.
They are Champions League right now as we speak.
Right now. We should go. Best of luck with Calgary Wild. Hopefully, everything. I'm sure it will turn out well, whatever happens, and we'll chat again. Maybe next time you win a trophy, give us a shout.
Absolutely, sounds good. Go Shells always.
Yes, and any. I would suggest maybe any plans to get into media after football. Have you been asked to do any commentary or punditry?
That's a good question. I've never been asked. No, I've done a decent few podcasts, and I actually did work in sports media and partnerships for 2 or 3 years while playing. So for the Gist and then a few other smaller sports media companies. So I definitely have interest. Yeah, I studied business commerce throughout university. So I have that degree and partnerships and sales. So I think the women's game, there's tons of commercial opportunity and media excites me. So maybe one day you'll see me somewhere.
Well, I'm no expert, but I'd say it could be a future for you there in media. Christie, thanks a million. Chance meeting on a Ryanair flight a long time ago, and I just sort of been keeping an eye ever since. And it's great, and keep it going. And thanks for joining us today.
Thank you so much for your time. Appreciate it.
Good luck. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
So that's it. Christie, thank you very much. I just need to, you can stay where you are for a sec. Yes, thank you very much to Christie for joining us. Christie Gray, of course, go and follow her progress. She's in the NSL, new league in Canada, and a former Shells player. So come on, we got to support our own. I forgot to ask her about Damien Duff. But I didn't really want to talk about the men's game, you know what I mean? You could ask, are you going to tell me about Damien? Hang on a sec. We might have to add a little bit onto this. Are you happy to talk about Damien Duff?
I know he just left Shells, but you mentioned his name, but I only have great things to say about him. He's a great
guy. I'm a big fan. I mean, I've loved Damien Duff. I loved the way he carried himself, the way he played, the way he was a professional footballer, and I just thought he was brilliant for the League of Ireland, and it was so sad. But look, he should do whatever he wants in his career, and opportunities come along, and he was brilliant for the league. He really put it on the front pages as well as the back pages, and great to have somebody of his stature involved in the game as a manager, and I really thought he did well. And you have lots of good things to say about him.
Yeah, the only thing I was going to say is I agree with you, and I thought he was brilliant for the club, for the league. The overall credibility and the level, I think he brought a ton of professionalism to Shelbourne as a club. I know he would, support us and message our captain to check in, and was a great person to be involved, and I think helped really propel the team. Obviously, they won the League of Ireland last year, which seemed to be on a sooner trajectory than many maybe would have thought. So I think overall he had a pretty positive impact on his time in the league for both our club and beyond. And although obviously the loss or him choosing to leave does not directly affect me or the women's program, maybe, I think it's a very family-oriented club. So naturally, when you feel a loss, and especially before they are heading off to Champions League, the timing of it and all, You have to respect anyone at any point, but I think throughout the time he was here, he made a pretty significant impact. So it was great overall.
Yeah.
I thought I
Yeah.
only have positive things to say in the few times that I interacted with him. He was very supportive of us and of the club as a whole.
Just got the impression he was a good guy overall. And look, it's good that we separated the question about the men's game from the main interview. Thanks for watching, and we'll keep an eye on the channel for we'll be live, of course, at 11 o'clock on Friday. So.